I wanted to have a conversation with you about something that you noted on the Twitter sphere, where you asked questions about who it was that Donald Trump had appointed to the State Department. And you were talking about a tweet that had been posted by Darren J. Beattie, who is now in charge of the State Department. And he said the following on Twitter, with his full Twitter finger chest. He said, competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work. Unfortunately, our entire national ideology is predicated on coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men. Dante D. King, what does a statement like that from someone who is now in charge of the State Department, what does that tell you about the pervasiveness of the white psychopathy and sociopathic Black genocidal positioning that far too many members of the white American community still embrace and perpetuate?
So that's a great question. In my book, Diagnosing Whiteness, I define white malignant narcissism as extreme arrogance and self-centeredness, disregards feelings and needs of others, manipulates, uses, and exploits others for personal gain or pleasure, possesses an extreme need for power, exacts revenge against others upon critique, fantasizes about ways to gain more power or dominance over others, lacks conscience, regret, or remorse for actions and behaviors, delights in acts of cruelty and pain of others, directs high levels of aggression at other people, exhibits paranoia and mistrust of others. And so we're dealing with people who are not only unwell, but who are extremely perverse in the ways in which they've been trained to think, the values that they uphold, their belief system. And so, of course, we would have someone who has been coddled by this society. If anything, this society protects the feelings and the thoughts and beliefs of white men. And so he's using that word competent synonymously with whiteness, because it is their belief that it is their whiteness that makes them superior. It is their maleness that makes them superior. The fact that their genitalia, they have a penis that makes them superior somehow, like all of those things working together. And I just think it's very delusional. And these people are not only incompetent, they are inadequate, and they know it. And this is the reason why they have to project, because I also talk about white projection and all of the insecurities that white people have that they then verbalize in their projections onto others. So it's not even just rich. It's just so sad to see and to listen to. And the fact that we have to navigate a society with these narcissistic sociopaths, it's just, it really makes my heart very aggrieved.
And I love that you said it's just so sad to have the power that has been amassed and to use it in a way that really is for terrible, awful, no good, very bad things. And the projection is so real. You know, we're in a time right now where I just saw yesterday, there is another scrubbing of another governmental website. And this time they were scrubbing any mention of the awesome accomplishments of Black soldiers. And we also saw that they were erasing the accomplishments of women, most of whom are white. And we see that there is such a weak, it feels almost like I don't know. I need a word to describe the weakest element, the weakest link in any chain, in any element. There is such a fragile, maybe fragile is the word I need to use, but there is such a fragile approach to living that is resonant within those members of white society who are not a part of the righteous whites, those members of white society who unquestioningly participate in this psychopathic, sociopathic experiment. And I say fragile because they can't seem to, and evidenced by Daniel and Pete, two white men who just called to be the trolls in the segment before you came on, so fragile that they cannot even tolerate the idea that other people who were not white men accomplished things and did things and helped them benefit in ways that they are too fragile to even receive. What does that tell you? Because they project this measure of strength, like they are the alphas of the planet. And yet they tend to be some of the most fragile. And this is not a sweeping indictment against all people who are in this demographic, but for those who participate unquestioningly in this system, they seem to be one of the most fragile, delicate substances in the entire universe. Am I wrong in that understanding or that view of what is often projected as power?
No, you're absolutely right. In my estimation, I agree with the assessment. I think if you look up the definition of paranoia, we are dealing with people who are inherently fearful and also are extremely paranoid. And they're functioning in this moment as people who suffer from schizophrenia. If you look at the definition of schizophrenia, the things that these people are doing. I mean, you mentioned the taking down of soldiers' names from the website. I think Medgar Evers was one of the people who was removed from that site. Why? Where is the need to do that coming from? What is the underlying motivations? And that's what we have to get to, and not just as it pertains to these people's value system, but what is the underlying motivation in terms of the psychology? Let's examine the psychology of this and what is happening here. And so, late author Toni Morrison, there's that famous clip where she says, if you can only be tall because you have to put others down because people are on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And that is how we have to look at this. We have to evaluate this in the sense of we are dealing with people who are inhumane at their core. We have to look at all of the evidence in terms of their evolution and how whiteness evolved, how white maleness evolved, because we're dealing with a cult of terrorists, people whose legacy is going into other countries by force, using weaponry to take over those regions of the world, institute their own governments, institute their cultural value belief system. We also have to understand that education in this country prior to the 1860s was not free. It was privatized. It was privatized. And that is what these white people are attempting to go back to, because affordability or unaffordability is the new discrimination. And we have to understand that the people who create the legal tender, that brand that legal tender with the names and faces of the white people that they adorn, that they uplift as their forefathers, the names and faces of all of the people who are on these bills are white men. We have to understand this country is branded as a white country. It was founded by white people for white people. That is what these people know. It is what they understand. It has been absorbed into their DNA. And I am quite aligned with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and I mentioned her when we were speaking the other day, recording for the podcast, but who said that these people in their genetic recessivity are extremely frightened. It's more than just a fragility. They are extremely frightened that they are somehow going to be annihilated, that they will somehow be outdone, outperformed, out-resourced. And so to them, this is a fight for their survival. And we need to understand that, because they're willing to do anything to disfranchise people whose humanity they don't feel is worthy of any type of value or recognition.
One of the things that I think is so interesting about many of the things that you just said, but one in particular sticks out to me, this idea of invading other nations by force. This has been an aspect of European conquest since Europeans became Europeans. After they were the Germanic tribes and the Normandy tribes or nomadic tribes in France, and all the tribing, when they became states, when they became nation states. One of the things that we see is that they have always seen melanated countries as the proper locations for which their colonizing ventures should be against whom their colonizing ventures should be played. But what we're seeing right now is a similar approach to other European nations like Canada. Now, admittedly, Canada is very diverse, but it is largely, like America, a European nation. We're seeing it show up when it comes to ideas or notions of invading Greenland or taking the land from Ukraine and giving it to Russia. Methodologies that they have typically applied to other Black and brown communities, melanated nations, they are now employing against themselves in a way that almost feels like a circular firing squad. But this idea that the white Americans and white people who do not resist that sort of indoctrination, who do not resist that sort of programming and socialization, what are we, the people who see clearly what's happening? How do we create a society that has a solid third, if not greater number of the residents of this society who do subscribe to this narcissistic view of the world, when they are really projecting a fear that what they have done to other people would be done to them, when the people they did those things to really just want to be left alone. Nobody think about them, Cletus. Ain't nobody here for you, Otis. Like, we really just want to be left alone. Well, how do we do the work of building a better society when the society has to account for these malignant narcissists who, frankly, think the sun revolves around them still?
Well, we can't. And that's
Damn it.
it implied the implication in your question was so clear. We're dealing with narcissists, we're dealing with psychopathic sociopaths, and these are people, as Dr. Bobby Wright defined. He says that they are cold, callous, have a total disregard for the rights of others. And so, how do you build a society with people who are who function in that manner? It is impossible. And these people are within the leadership. They are in the leadership echelons of this society, within our institutions, within our political institutions. They control our economic structures. I mean, these are the people who are in charge, and that has also been the history of this country. White supremacy, anti-blackness was enacted by the leadership of America, historically into the present. And so there is no building a society when racism is the main economic structure. It is the main economic system in America. We have to understand that whiteness was developed as a value system, as a value set, and every other racialized variant on the scale of racialization is a variant of value. So, Asians have a particular value that they've been assigned, particularly East Asians in our culture. Latinx, Hispanic people have a value that is proximate to Asian people, but a bit less, but not as low as or as least as Black people. We have an infinite valuelessness that has been placed upon us in this society. So we have to understand that everything, the ways in which our economics flow, it follows that value set. And so we will not be able to get to a place of humanity, of community, because this society thrives and functions on inhumanity, and it is rooted in inhumanity. And so therefore, everything that we do in this society is a transaction. It is a transaction to support, uphold the American white imperialist empire, to feed into the economics of this country. We are here as exploited subjects and exploited subjects only. And as Dr. Wright said, and some others have said this too, James Baldwin, when you decide to go against the society and tell the truth about this society can turn around and kill you. It can make it impossible for you to survive. And so that's why a lot of people are not as, I guess, forceful or assertive or aggressive in terms of how they present this information. But for me, all bets are off, because I just cannot contain what I am seeing, what I know to be true, and what I have been able to evidence.